27 knife wounds and 1 gunshot to the head. Was this overkill, a young girl trying to save her life, or a friend's attack by a passionate lover? Hi, my name's Sara Jade and welcome to my channel where we talk about true crime, unsolved cases and more. So if this is something you're interested in, feel free to subscribe. Now let's get into this week's case. So in today's case we're going to be talking about Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias. This case captured the nation in 2008 because it was involved sex and religion and how far one person can go to save their own skin. Travis Alexander was born on the 28th of July 1977 in Riverside, California. He grew up poor and his parents were drug addicts. They would go out on binges and leave him and his siblings at home without any food. His mum was abusive towards him, and when he was 10 years old he decided he'd had enough and he decided to run away. However, his grandma rescued him and he moved in with his grandparents. His grandmother was a Mormon and introduced him to the church. This helped him turn his life around. In 1997, when his father died, his 7 siblings also moved in with his grandparents. Around this time, he went on a mission with the church for 2 years in Denver. On his return to South Carolina, he became a motivational speaker and a salesman for Prepaid Legal. Prepaid Legal was a multi-level marketing company, and it was popular among the Mormon community as they were already comfortable meeting and interacting with new people. Travis was a natural-born salesman, and his friends described him as successful, good-looking, and had a good group of friends, and was determined to better his life. In 2004, Travis was enjoying his life in Mesa, Arizona. He had a large group of friends, he had a nice house and nice car, and was growing his business with PPL. As an incentive from his company, he was given the chance to go to a conference down in Las Vegas, and this is where he met Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias was born on the 9th of July in 1980 in California. She was the oldest daughter to William and Sandra Arias, and she grew up in a stable home. She was described as quiet, a good student, very artistic, and very pretty. Things started to change for Jodi when her and her family moved to Wairika. Her and her parents started to argue quite a lot, and she once got busted for marijuana. In senior year, Jodi decided to move out of her parents' house, and she described them as too strict. So she moved in with her boyfriend, dropped out of school, and became a waiter at Denny's. Her boyfriend then cheats on her, and she decides to leave and go and work for a spa. While working at the spa, she meets a man called Daryl Brewer and his son. They start a relationship, and 4 years later, cracks start to show, as Jodi wants to get married and have children, however he's done all that already and didn't want any more kids. At this time, Jodi was looking for some extra cash, so she signed up for PPL Legal. She decided to go to the conference in Las Vegas, and her sponsor sets her up on a blind date with Travis. Jodi and Travis really hit it off at the event. They spend the whole night together talking and getting to know each other. However, at the end of the event, they part ways and he goes back home. Jodi then goes home and immediately breaks up with her boyfriend. Jodi and Travis start to spend quite a lot of time together. However, there's a problem. Jodi's not a Mormon, and in Travis's faith, he should be with a Mormon woman. He starts to introduce Jodi to his religion and show her books and introduces her to some of his friends. And just 2 months later, she converts to the LDS Church and is baptised by Travis himself. They officially start dating in February 2007 and start a long-distance relationship. Because of the distance between them, they decide to set up mini breaks and go on little holidays together or spend time at one of Travis's friends' house. In their relationship, they had a little secret. In the Mormon faith, you should abstain from sex until you're married. However, Travis was quite interested in sex and fought between his demons, fulfilling his sexual desires and keeping towards his faith. However, it wasn't long before him and Jodi started a sexual relationship. At first, Travis's friends really like Jodi and think she's quite sweet and easy to talk to. However, as time goes by, they start to get a bit worried about her and get some weird vibes. She would follow Travis to the toilet, listen to all his conversations, stalk his emails and check his bank accounts. On one occasion, his close friends asked him to come up into the bedroom, and as they were sitting on the bed, they said to him, "We're worried about you. She stalks you, she follows you everywhere, and I'm a bit concerned." They said, "I bet she's even listening to the door right now." He was like, "Don't be silly, of course she's not." So he went to the door, and when he opened it, Jodi was standing there. This freaked Travis out, and with other unsettling behaviour that he'd seen from her, he decided to end their relationship. He'd only seen it as a sexual relationship anyway, and didn't want to continue, as she was freaking him out. After this, Jodi did something that you really wouldn't do after a relationship. She moved to Mesa, closer to Travis. Travis was so annoyed about this. He was like, "We finished this relationship, why are you here?" And she made an excuse and said, "I'm just here to be part of the Mormon community and be closer to my friends." However, Travis couldn't resist her pull and started sleeping with her again. At this time, Jodi increased her stalking behaviour and would sneak into his house at night, sleep in his bed, and then would slash his tyres if he went on any dates with anyone else. In April 2008, Travis eventually convinces Jodi to go back home. He said it would give them a chance to get over the relationship and move on. Jodi starts to see someone else from PPL, and Travis starts to get close to Mimi Hall and get in a good stead with his church. In June 2008, Mimi Hall was getting ready to go to a trip to Cancun. Travis had won this trip with PPL and had decided to take Mimi along with him so the relationship could get closer together. However, she got quite concerned when she hadn't heard from him and decided to call his friend Chris. Chris was also concerned as he hadn't heard from him either, and he was trying to discuss with him about a few of the trips that they were going to do in Cancun. As no one had heard from him, she decided to go around his house and have a look. She turned up at the house and she started to knock on the doors and check through the windows, and she could see his dog but had no sign of Travis. She then called one of his friends, and his friend and his girlfriend turned up at the house to help her look around. They eventually got the code from Chris so that they could go into the garage and get into the house. When they got into the house, they all searched around, looked in all the rooms and couldn't find him. However, when they went to Travis's door, his door was locked. They decided to go and knock on one of the doors of one of his roommates. So they knocked on the door, and eventually his friend answered, and they were like, "Didn't you hear us come in the house?" And he said, "Sorry, I've had the TV on, I didn't hear anything." And they asked him if he'd heard from Travis. He said he hadn't heard from Travis, as he thought he'd gone to Cancun. He went through his stuff and found a key into Travis's room. They knocked on the door of Travis's room, and when he still didn't answer, they used the key to go in. When they entered, they saw blood on the floor, and as they walked through the hallway into the bathroom, they saw spats of blood, and as they got closer, they saw Travis dead in the shower. Seeing that Travis was clearly dead, they ran out of the room and called 911.
Yeah, see, what's going on? What? What's going on? A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there. Yes, please, can you?
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
Okay. How did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him
Okay,
for
well,
a few days.
She said that there's blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut
No,
his head?
it's all over the place.
Hold on just a moment. Okay. You're a good friend of Travis's, right? Yes, I am. Okay. Yeah. Has he been depressed at all? Thinking about committing suicide, anything like that?
I don't think he's been thinking of committing suicide. He's been really depressed because he broke up with this girl, and he was all upset about that. But I don't think he would actually kill himself over that.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
And do you know the ex-girlfriend's name?
Do you remember? Yeah. What's his ex-girlfriend's name? Ask her.
And do you know if he's ever reported it to the police?
Her name is Jodi.
Detective Flores and Juan Martinez turned up at the house around 12 o'clock. They searched through the house and started the process as crime scene. They found blood everywhere, in the sink, on the walls, a large pool of blood in the hallway, and one bloody palm print on the side of the wall. They'd taken Travis's body for forensic analysis, and when they do, they find a .25 caliber bullet on the floor near his head. While thoroughly checking out the room, they realised that the bed sheets were missing from the bed, so they decided to go and check down in the washroom to see if they could find anything and the missing bed sheets. When they get there, when they're searching through the washers, they find a camera in the washing machine. This came as quite a surprise to them and looked quite suspicious, so they took it in for forensic testing. His two roommates become the initial suspects, as they had lived in the house for 5 days with his body in his bedroom and hadn't noticed any of the smell. They said that they are both bachelors and it could have been anything. It could have been bad rubbish, it could have been dirty dishes, and it wasn't them. However, when their alibis got checked out, they were free to go and were no longer suspects in the case. Quite soon after the murders, Jodi rang into the police. After a strange phone call, they got quite suspicious of Jodi. They had spoken to some of Travis's friends, Chris and Sky, who had both said that they should check out Jodi as well. This made them quite suspicious and she became a suspect in the case. However, she said it couldn't be her. She was up in Salt Lake City seeing her friends and there was no reason that she would hurt Travis. They then got the big break that they were looking for in the case. The photos had come back from the cameras and on the cameras showed pictures of Travis and Jodi. They were date stamped and this put Jodi in his house on the day of the murder. There were pictures of them on the bed, there were nude pictures of them, and there were pictures of Travis in the shower. This meant that everything that Jodi had said so far was a lie. Detective Flores decides to go down to Wairika to speak to Jodi. He wants to get her side of the story and her statement. So on July 15th, Jodi comes into Siski's sheriff's office to give her statement. She denies any involvement in the case and says that she has no reason to kill Travis and had last spoke to him on Monday for about 45 minutes. Here he had tried to convince her to come down, however she was going up to Salt Lake City to see her friends and meet up with Ryan Burns at the PPL conference. She described how on July the 2nd she had left North Carolina, drove down to South Carolina to see a couple of friends and then made the drive up to Salt Lake City. When she got there, she met up with Ryan about 11 o'clock at his house. The police mentioned to her that all the evidence is pointed towards her and some people had suggested her as a suspect. They then went on to talk about her sexual relationship with Travis and she said she didn't want to speak about this as she didn't want to put a bad name against his name because of his religion and didn't want his family to find out.
And I'm just putting two and two together.
Well,
And it kind of matches. So one of the reasons I'm here is to talk to you to figure out what was going on between you two. I know the relationship that you guys had was of convenience sometimes. Obviously, you weren't boyfriend and girlfriend anymore, but you were still having a sexual relationship, which
does his family know about that? Just curious.
No, his family doesn't know anything. Yeah.
I'm interested in protecting his how he's remembered as well, and he was
Well, I'm sure if Travis could speak right now, he wouldn't care what people thought about him, because they knew who he was. Okay, a sexual relationship here or there, because the fact he was a member of the church really doesn't matter.
A couple times I asked him
whole range of things.
Yeah, I think in the broad scope of things that could be right. I just think that the reason I care about that is because he was adamant about that, and a couple times we prayed about it, didn't work, or we didn't stick to our guns on it. And one time a girlfriend of mine just said, why don't you just go to your bishop and talk, and ask Travis the same, and I talked to him about it and he got really angry. He said, I've already had problems with this in the past, I'm embarrassed by it, I don't want to go to my bishop.
They then questioned her on her timeline as there were about 24 hours missing between her drive from South Carolina up to Salt Lake City. She blamed this on getting lost and having to sleep in her car as she didn't know where to go. She slept for about 12 hours and then drove up to Salt Lake City.
Death Valley. I was maybe going to
Did you actually cross over into Arizona? Is that how far you went?
I crossed over twice, I think. My map was wrong because the 93 goes north, and then I hit the 15 again, and then I got here, and then I hit Arizona, and then went here. Somehow I got north on the 93,
Okay.
and then I hit the 15. So, I mean, I don't know where Phoenix is, Mesa, it's got to be over here.
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere near there.
So you took this trip and you left on, was it Monday the 2nd? Right? And you didn't get to Utah until Thursday, you told me.
Yeah, I got to Utah on Thursday.
So Thursday, and that's the 5th?
Yeah, I think so.
Monday, that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, yeah, 5th. Okay, so we have, it's like 48 hours there that, well, obviously 3 days, but there's 48 hours. So this trip took you a little over 48 hours then. I have a problem with this trip.
Well, I went first too.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know you went down here.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, Wairika, right there. beautiful little place here, except it's kind of smoky.
Yeah,
You can't
right
see
now.
the views. I was hoping to see some mountains, but
You really should
Yes.
see Mount Shasta if you get a chance.
I've gone over this trip over and over in my mind and on paper. And even if there's still 20 some odd hours, even if you pulled over to sleep a couple of times,
Oh, did I tell you that I got stranded?
Yeah.
Okay.
you mentioned that. If you slept for 10 hours
I only slept for about
here
8
and here, it would still leave 18 some odd hours for something else. Okay. This is what people are focusing on, is this trip that you took. Because they're saying she left, she didn't get to till Thursday. Wednesday? That's when Travis was killed.
They then questioned that her blood was at the scene, her hair was found at the scene of the crime. She put this down to the fact that she spent a lot of time at Travis's house and being at a bachelor's pad, they didn't really clean that often, so of course her hair and her blood would be at the scene. They then went on to show her the biggest evidence they had against her, which was the pictures of her and Travis at his house on the day of the murder. She blew this off and said that anyone could change the date stamps, and they were probably old pictures of when they were together. She still denied everything and came up with different stories of why the pictures might be there and wouldn't budge on anything. Although Jodi wasn't confessing, they had plenty of evidence against her and they decided to charge her for murder. At this time she was going to be booked, her photo was going to be taken and she was going to be taken down to the jail. Jodi, before she was taken down, asked if she could fix herself up first before she had her pictures taken. This showed that she was more concerned about how she looked than Travis being dead.
So I'm getting help from this county and the deputies here, and they're assisting me. So I need to get with them and find out how long it's going to take.
This is a really trivial question, and it's going to reveal how shallow I am. But before they book me, can I clean myself up a little bit?
You're going to be taken the way you are. I can't give you anything else.
How soon?
While they went down to get everything ready to get her booked, she was left in the interview room on her own, and she demonstrated some weird behaviour. She was doing handstands, she was singing Oh Holy Night, and she showed no emotion at all. When she was taken down to have a photo taken, she smiled at the camera, which showed she really cared about just herself and nobody else. The next day they bring her in for a second round of questioning, and they decide to bring in a female interrogator, as they thought this would appeal to her motherly side. However, she completely shuts down, as she doesn't interact very well with women and communicates better with men. In the next interrogation with Detective Flores, she finally opens up and tells her side of the story. However, it's a completely random story and it's quite unconvincing. She says she did go down to see Travis that night. She got there late and they went straight to bed, and in the morning they had had sex. Travis had gone into the bathroom to have a shower, and when she came in there, a man and a woman came into the house with ski masks on. They came into the room, shot Travis and threatened to kill her. She ran away and hid in a cupboard as they had killed Travis. They then discussed whether they were going to kill her or not. As they were not there for her, they were going to leave her. She said they did check her driver licence though to find out where she lived and threatened her family. As soon as they left, she ran out the house, got in her car and drove to Salt Lake City. This case was then taken to trial with Juan Martinez as a deputy attorney on the case. He wanted to prove premeditated murder and seek the death penalty. They mentioned on the 28th of May a burglary had occurred at her grandparents' house, and the only thing that was missing was a gun that had the same bullets as one of the bullets that was left at the murder scene. They also discussed how her travels didn't match up with her timeline and how she had kept all her receipts but purposely didn't have any for Arizona. They also discussed how she went to see her ex-boyfriend and borrowed 2 petrol cans. They believed that she had filled this up before she went into Arizona so that she didn't have to get any petrol while she was in Arizona and risk getting caught on the CCTV camera. They also mentioned that when she was in Salt Lake City, she had left a voicemail on Travis's phone and said about how she was going to call him. She wouldn't have done this if she had already known that he was killed by 2 masked killers in his house the night before. They also mentioned that when she returned the car that she was borrowing, they had missing mats and there was blood found in the car. They also mentioned that before he died, Travis spoke about someone accessing his emails, his bank accounts, and stalking him, and they believed that this was Jodi as well. In June 2010, Jodi suddenly changes her story and says that she acted in self-defence. She said she did go down to see him that night and that she was his dirty little secret and always pushed him to have sex. They had sex that day, and when he went to the showers, she started to take photos of him. However, she dropped the camera by accident, and at this Trevor had switched. He jumped out the shower, picked her up and rugby tackled her to the floor. She managed to escape and run round into his wardrobe, where she found his gun on the side. When she grabbed his gun, she ran back round, and as he charged towards her, she shot him. However, he didn't die, and they started to struggle, and this is when she stabbed him to save herself. The medical examiner then went through his wounds. They said that he had 27 stab wounds all over him, and most of them on his back. He had a gunshot wound to the right side of his head, which would have made him unable to move, and his neck was slit from ear to ear. They also talked about how, before he was murdered, she had stalked him and checked his voicemails and checked his emails and bank accounts. Jodi was then put on the stand, and there was a notable difference in her appearance of what she was on the stand and how she was before. She was quite dowdy, dressed quite down, and had dyed her hair quite dark. This was the complete opposite of how she was before she was caught. She then went on to describe her and Travis's unhealthy relationship. She described how he was quite emotional, abusive towards her, and at one point she had caught him doing the most atrocious thing he could ever do. She said that she had walked in on him masturbating, and he had all these pictures around him, and as she walked in the room, he tried to clear them all up, but one fell down, and it was a picture of a child. She said at this point that she'd become quite scared of him and couldn't see a way out of the relationship. She decided to stay with him, and as he was quite abusive towards her, she would just do whatever he would say. She described again how on that night she'd gone there, they had had sex, and as he was in the shower, she'd dropped the camera and he attacked her, and after that she couldn't remember anything and she completely blanked out. The defence argued against all her stories and challenged her memory problems. They had searched Travis's computer and there was no evidence of any of these child photos that she spoke about, and there was nothing at his house, so it was only her word against his. They also spoke about how the fact that she kept coming back and how it's quite convenient that now her memory had gone. They also spoke about a wound that she had received on her hand. She had blamed this wound on a fight that she had had with Travis, and he had kicked her in the hand and damaged it. However, the defence showed photos of her after this time, which showed her hand was fine, and they believed that she had received the wound when stabbing Travis. The jury then deliberated for 5 days, and on the 8th of May 2013, she was found guilty of murder. During the whole trial, Jodi had done lots of press conferences in the jail and at the courthouse. She had done up all her makeup and gave her story of how she was abused. And as soon as she was found guilty, she gave another press conference. In this press conference, she spoke about how she'd rather death penalty than sitting in jail. However, they believed this was a tactic of hers to persuade the jury to give her life instead of putting her on death row. During her sentencing trial, Jodi had the chance to come up and give a statement. She came over and she held on to the story that she was abused, and she'd done it in self-defence. She spoke about how she was helping other women in prison, and there was quite a shock as she brought out a t-shirt that said "Survivor" across the front. This didn't go down too well in the courthouse. After some deliberation, the jury came back and there was an 8-4 verdict on her death penalty. As this wasn't unanimous, it was classed as a mistrial. A year and a half later, there was another sentencing trial. However, after 6 days of deliberation, they came down to 11-1 to the death penalty. And as again, this wasn't unanimous, it was classed as a mistrial. As you can only have 2 sentencing trials, it goes down to the judge, who then gave her life in prison. Jodi now spends her time in Perryville Prison in Arizona. After the trial, both the lawyers were disbarred. Her lawyer was disbarred as he wrote a tell-all story about her and included classified information, while Martinez was disbarred as he'd had a relationship with a blogger and they had said he'd given information about the case. Although he denied this, he stepped down as a lawyer. So that's the end of the case. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
You call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger, a willing and able.